Hey everybody, guess what day it is? Yeah, it's Friday. And Q&A Live. So part 3 of our series on Bill Nye, answering the big think claims. So last week we finished up with, your world just becomes fantastically complicated. And I mean, what are we going to do with those ancient dinosaur bones and radioactivity? What are we going to do? Well, this week is going to be a little bit different than our previous ones. I'm going to have to show you a bunch of video clips because we have to address this ancient dinosaur bone thing. What are we going to do? I want you to see evidence from a non-Christian source on what the dinosaur bones actually show. So let's go back. This is old stuff here, man. It's been around a long time, but it's very interesting that a lot of people still haven't heard about this. So let's go back and watch a 60-minute clip.
What happened next happened by mistake. Mary put some fragments of the bone in acid to dissolve away the outermost layer of mineral. But the acid worked too fast and all the mineral dissolved away. Being a fossil, there should have been nothing left. But there was. And it was elastic, like living tissue.
This is the piece.
No.
She showed us video she took under the microscope.
That's really what happened?
Yes.
That's the dinosaur bone?
Without mineral now. That's what was left.
It looked like the soft tissue she would have expected to find if it had been modern bone. This was impossible. This bone was 68 million years old.
Okay, let me set this up for you. Dinosaur bones, fossilized. She takes and she puts some of that bone from the matrix of the T-Rex leg. She puts it in a chemical that dissolves the fossilization. And when it's done, there was dinosaur tissue. Now I want you to think about that for a second. And again, this is old stuff. Initially they fought and said, it's not tissue, it's the biofilm, it's all these kind of things. It is actually tissue. And you're going to see even more in a second here. You're finding dinosaur tissue that's supposedly 68, even older, million years? Guys, and did you notice what she said? This is what we should expect if it was from a modern animal. Yeah, which means it's not millions of years old. So what about those ancient dinosaur bones? What do they show? Take a listen.
So you see this and you think, what?
I didn't want to tell anybody.
Okay, I want you to please consider this for a second. You have just made the most astounding discovery over hundreds of years in science. You have just discovered dinosaur flesh. And what is your response? You don't want to tell anybody? Why would you not want to tell anybody? You followed the scientific method and you now show that dinosaur flesh is still here, plus more. And you don't want to tell anybody. Why? Well, science is, we just want to put the information out there and put the truth out there. Oh, it doesn't work like that. Because if you're not following the party line, bad things happen very quick. Take a listen to what she says, why she didn't want to show people what she had found.
You'd be ridiculed,
Yes.
right?
And so I said to my technician, okay, do it again. I don't believe it.
And yet, in sample after sample, they were there. Things that looked suspiciously like flexible, transparent blood vessels. She finally mustered the courage to tell Jack.
She said she dissolved the bone away and there were blood vessels. And, I was like shocked. I mean,
How could that be?
How could that be? That's right.
How could that be? I have a suggestion. Maybe it's not millions of years old. Watch, here's another clip.
The things Mary was finding inside dinosaur bones,
Look at that.
blood vessels, and even what seemed to be intact cells, pose a radical challenge to the existing rules of science, that organic material can't possibly survive even 1 million years, let alone 68 million.
Guys, science shows that blood vessels, red blood cells, tissue, bone cannot last millions of years. It can't. I mean, even if you were to cryogenetically store DNA, tissue, red blood cells, this stuff is not going to, it breaks down. And matter of fact, it's getting even more interesting here within the last couple months. I've read reports that they're actually finding DNA now. They're finding DNA. That stuff flies in the face of everything that we know about science. It can't last millions of years. And that's not Carl Kirby. That's what the science actually shows, is that there is no known mechanism to store all of this stuff. So these ancient dinosaur bones, maybe they're not so ancient after all. So please consider this. Please consider this. Is there another possibility? And I would say yes, there is. And that possibility is, again, this stuff isn't millions of years old. Let me show you just one more clip.
Mary, Jack, and their team published their B-Rex findings in a series of papers in the journal Science and were promptly attacked. Critics said their samples might have been contaminated, or that the supposed blood vessels were actually something called biofilm, a type of slime.
And the stakes are high. What about DNA? Like I told you, just recently there's been reports now that they are finding what they do believe to be dinosaur DNA. And if they're finding these things, scientifically it can't be millions of years old. Now there's some even more interesting research that I would encourage you to go check out. The Creation Research Society has been doing something called iDino. And one of the things that they did was they found a Triceratops brow horn. And this is out where we lead our dinosaur digs. One of these days you got to come dig dinosaur bones with us. They found a Triceratops brow horn that what they did is they followed the exact same procedure that Mary Schweitzer did. And they took a piece of it and they put it in the chemicals. And what happened is that when they followed this procedure, not only did they find just some red blood cells and blood vessels, when they took off the calcification, they found entire sheets of osteocytes. These are the cells that make things grow. They found entire sheets of these things on that Triceratops brow horn. Guys, this stuff can't be millions of years old. You're finding entire sheets of osteocytes on brow horns of Triceratops that are supposedly millions of years old. But the radioactivity, the radioisotopes, it proves millions of years. Look, do me a favor, download our app. It's free of charge. I mean, just go to your app store and look for Reasons for, F-O-R, Hope, and look for that blue asterisk and download the app. And then go to Questions Answered. And under Questions Answered, there's a bunch of video clips on there answering various questions. But one of them is a simple illustration to understand what radiometric dating does. Does it give us dates? And the answer is no, it doesn't. It gives you ratios of a parent and a daughter isotope, and then they use a mathematical formula to come up with a date. But there's a simple video on there showing you the process, and it's all free. Just take that and put it to use. But let me give you a couple of examples of problems that you find with radioisotope dating. These are very interesting. So in Australia, they were drilling down through some layers, and then they hit a tree stump, and this tree stump was about 69 feet down. And this tree stump, interestingly enough, extended in between that basalt layer and a siltstone layer that was underneath of it. So the basalt layer is 30 million years and the siltstone layer is 255 million years old, according to the evolutionary model. But there's a problem. Well, there's two problems, simply. Number one, how did that tree grow in between these two layers? If one is 255 million years old, how did it hang around for all those millions of years till that 30 million year old basalt came in and got laid down? It didn't. But anyway, the bigger problem is this. They were able to carbon date the tree. And the tree dated between 44 and 45,000 years old. So think about this for a second. How in the world do you get something that's 44,000 years old in rock that's 30 million years, 255 million years old? How does that work? It doesn't work. It doesn't work. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of examples of things like that you can go find. But when you go back and you look at, like I told you, do some research on that RATE project, I think they've done a really good job with RATE and iDino, because the RATE project, what they did is they actually started taking diamonds. And diamonds are the hardest substance known on Earth, right? And they were taking diamonds, and they're supposedly millions of years old. They were made deep down in the earth over millions of years, and they started testing them, and they found something very interesting. Radiocarbon has been found in the diamonds that only dates to 55,000 years. Now, I don't even believe those dates, but anyway, just look at the problems. If these diamonds are millions of years old, hardest substance known to man, how in the world do you get something that's 55,000 years old inside of a diamond that's millions of years? You can't. And by the way, the research that they did, almost every diamond that they found had some form of radiocarbon in it. I mean, This is the same as saying that you've got an ice cube and you're able to stick something inside that ice cube and not leave you'd have to drill a hole to get in there, and there's none of that. You are finding things that are dated thousands of years instead of things that are supposedly millions of years old. Go look at their research. It's really interesting, and I would say that it absolutely challenges this idea that the Earth is millions of years old, and it's been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt. Polonium halos. This is one of the first things that I read about when I was a Christian, but I was still believing in evolution because that's all that had been taught to me. And it's the same concept. You've got something that lasts shorter than that, and you're finding this inside of granite, which is supposedly millions of years old, and it slowly, gradually cooled down to turn into granite. And you've got something that lasts like that, and it wasn't destroyed as it was in the hot molten blob premise. Go study it. It's just an interesting thing. There's a neat book on it by Robert Gentry. Oh gosh, I'm getting stumped on the title here, but I think it's something with tiny mystery. I'll put it down in the link below. I'll go find it and I'll put it down in the link below. So let's jump back here though. What about those ancient dinosaur bones? What do they actually show? Well, let me show you the chart that was one of the catalysts to me becoming a creationist and not just believing in evolution. It's the Dinosaur Chart. And this is the fossil chart that shows at the very bottom that when you start with two lizards, given enough time, mutation, one thing turns into another and you get all the different dinosaurs, and there it is, Carl. What are you going to do? That proves that evolution's a fact. The fossils don't show that. Number one, the science shows that they can't be millions of years because of the fact that you've got blood cells and blood vessels and all that sort of a thing. And number two, take a look at their chart again. But that proves evolution. No, it doesn't. As I was reading this chart, as a brand new Christian, someone who believed that God used evolution because that's what I was taught, I looked in the bottom right-hand corner. I saw the fine print. And guess what that fine print says? Tinted areas indicate solid fossil evidence. What does that mean? Well, you notice the red area? That's the tinted area. That's the solid fossil evidence. That's what we actually find. The red area is actually straight. When you look at this chart and critically evaluate it, what this chart is actually showing you is that one thing stayed one thing, never changed from or into anything else. This is telling us that an apatosaur was always an apatosaur, an ankylosaur was always an ankylosaur, a pachycephalosaur was always a pachycephalosaur. This shows us that one thing stayed one thing, never changed from or into anything else. This is absolutely what we should find if God created the way that he said that he did. Now, not the millions of years, but one thing stayed one thing. Now, let's look at that chart just a little bit more. You see that yellow band that I put on there? Notice all the white stuff that's behind there. It's white because there's no evidence. Because if there was evidence, then it would be tinted, but it's not tinted. So actually, what the white stuff is somebody's thinking. I think that this happened. And so they put these pieces together and came up with this whole process of evolution. But notice, that's 30 million years of time. Notice how much evolution change over time had to take place. And then for 70 million years, 80 million years, things changed like crazy for 30 million years. But then for 150 million years, they didn't change anymore. Because what? They liked the way that they looked? Man, I just want to go back 20 years. I look totally different than I do today 20 years ago. 20 years, I'd be happy. It doesn't work. You see, what we actually see in the evidence, from the scientific evidence, the bones aren't millions of years old. The fossils actually show that one thing stayed one thing, which is what we should find if God did what he said that he did, the way that he said that he did it. So there you go. Those ancient dinosaur bones aren't a problem for us. They actually are consistent with what God said and what we read in his word. But, I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, but Carl, we need engineers who could build stuff and solve problems, right? That's what you're thinking? No, I know that's not what you're thinking, but that's what we're going to get told next time when we come back on part 4 and finish up with Bill Nye, the science guy. And that's where he's going to take us. It's like, come on, man, if you don't believe in evolution, I mean, you're just so bad. So thank you for joining me this time, and I'll see you next week and finish this up. Stay bold.